Darcy McRae, originally from Winnipeg. I grew up with 6 boys, lots of sports in my family. My dad was a cab driver. We grew up very poor. We lived in low-income housing developments around the city. Grew up with many other Indigenous and Métis families, although at the time we weren't acknowledged or recognizing ourselves that way. We were just Indians. That's what we knew. I asked my dad, I said, "Well, Dad, what kind of an Indian are we?" And he would just give me a smile because he was proud I was recognizing it. But then a tear would drop and he wouldn't answer me. He faced discrimination as an Indian person, but I don't think he knew what Métis meant. I don't think he knew our family history. I learned about it just shortly after his passing. One of my grandfathers, Duncan McRae, built Upper Fort Garry, where Manitoba was brought into Confederation, built Lower Fort Garry, where Treaty 1 was signed. He built all the churches in between, including the one he's buried at himself. I passed these places through soccer and hockey back and forth, never knowing that was my grandpa's buildings. I did not know that. I've learned that. Well, I was studying Métis history for 30 years. Our first root grandmother is where we get our Indigenous rights and our Indigenous blood. The Métis people are the economic engine of Canada. We are the fur trade descendants. The fur trade was actually the global economy. The beaver was worth 4 times the value of gold. They found that the richest beavers were out in the west of Canada. So people were coming out, getting the beavers, taking it back to England, and then they would do the processing of that to get the fine hair out, and then it would be waterproof, and that was the key thing of them. Before a fort, we'd also just open up a trading house. The Indians in the neighborhood would come in and see what was available. And this is where our intermarriage, our mixed blood origins come from. It wasn't just our ancestry anymore. Other people saw the riches and they started to come. The whole West was open through connecting all the fur trade forts and then bringing in the manpower needed to sustain those forts. And that's how our nation started to build, was through the fur trade, through the relationship to Indigenous peoples. There is not one treaty area in Western Canada that does not have a Métis community within the numbered treaty. We also needed people who could be the interpreters, people who could speak the Indigenous language to be able to share what was being told, and also wanting to hear what the Indigenous peoples also wanted. Building bridges between non-Native and Native societies. We continue to do that today.